Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Bahcesehir. It was an agreement that gave an internationally recognized government embroiled in civil war a much-needed diplomatic boost. It was also a signal to other countries in the region. Turkey and Libya recently signed an agreement that laid out their respective maritime jurisdictions in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. With the discovery of vast hydrocarbon reserves, the Eastern Mediterranean is being called one of the world's most geostrategic maritime zones. And being home to the longest continental coast in those waters, Turkey has long advocated for a multilateral approach to solve disputes in the area. But for years, certain countries have excluded Turkey when it came to determining the region's maritime boundaries. Complicating matters further is the long-running dispute over the Turkish and Greek-administered parts of Cyprus, which lies directly in those waters. Will this latest deal between Turkey and Libya heighten tensions, or will it force all parties to realize that a multilateral diplomatic approach is the only solution? And joining me now is Guma el Gamaty, who is a special envoy to the president of Libya's interim government, and Nursin Atesoglu Guney, who is the dean of the Faculty of Economics, Administrative and Social Sciences at Bahcesehir, Cyprus University. Nursin, Guma, thank you for joining me on Straight Talk. Turkey has signed two agreements with the international recognized Libyan government, one on the maritime boundaries and the other one on the military cooperation, which immediately angered their regional neighbors, let's say. Tensions seem to be heightening, and Turkey says, along with Libya, they cannot allow any fait accompli in the Eastern Mediterranean, and that the problems should be resolved through dialogue. But then the U.S. State Department joined in, saying that this memorandum of understanding, which came into force at the Turkish parliament, is unhelpful and provocative. So, Guma, how provocative, or rather significant, is this Turkey-Libya deal?
Well, it should not be provocative at all, and it is very significant because it restored Libya's sovereign rights over its rights to the Mediterranean Sea opposite its coastline. Because Turkey and Libya, the far east of Libya, are almost opposite each other on the Mediterranean, which means they can have joint border to utilize up to 200 kilometers of sea and utilize it for fishery and for any other purposes.
Why Greece is so angered? Because we know that Greece is expelling the Libyan ambassador in the country.
Greece is angry because, according to this agreement, Libya has managed to take back what it's rightful for it, which is 39,000 kilometers of seawater of the Mediterranean, which should be under the Libyan sovereignty. This area was actually occupied by Greece, utilized by Greece unlawfully and unrightly. So Libya has claimed back this area according to international law and according to this border agreement, and this should be utilized by solely by Libya. So Greece has lost out, but it's lost out something that it does not belong to it. So it should not be really angry at all.
So, Nursin, what is Turkey is hoping to achieve in this move, and why it took Turkey so long to initiate such an agreement?
Yes,
so
the agreement in itself is very important for both sides, as it's been mentioned by Guma. It is a loss that is recovered by this agreement by the Libyan legitimate government, recognized by UN. But on the other side of the side of Turkey, it is also important because Turkey so far, this is not a new happening. Since 2009 onwards, there was technical negotiations were going onwards, and there is the Admiral Cihat Yaycı has published many articles that Turkey and also Libya was neighbors from the sea. We used to know that we could only delimit the maritime zones by vertical lines, but according to his thesis, he's specialized in international law. He was saying that if you make this limitation by diagonal lines, you will see that Libya, as along with Lebanon and Israel, we are neighbors from the sea. So this new agreement based on this logic And also, again, with this agreement, Turkey has declared its, for the first time, with a literal state of Libya in this area, that it has now limits on the eastern Mediterranean, but the western side of the Mediterranean. So this was previously registered to UN in 2004.
So it's
far,
not new.
It is not new, but it has been newly registered once it has been accepted by the Turkish Parliament yesterday. It was going to go to the UN very soon.
So Guma, tell us about the significance of Turkey's Marmaris, Fethiye, Kaş, and Libya's Derna, Tobruk, and Bordia axis, because the new line is set up like that.
Yes.
Does Libya have the means to defend or explore in this region, or eventually it'll seek Turkey's assistance?
Well, first of all, Libya has restored what is its rightful for Libya, which is its right over this new area, which is 39,000 kilometers of seawater, which Libya has the sovereignty over. Libya can utilize for fishery, for mining, for gas, for oil, for offshore oil and gas, or whatever it is. This is consistent with international maritime law, and Libya is taking what is rightful.
But Greece, Syria, Israel, Egypt,
but Libya has the longest coastline on the Mediterranean, 2,000 kilometers. So does Turkey. So Libya has had an agreement with Malta, has had an agreement with Tunisia, and is willing in the future to have similar agreements with other countries, including Greece. But we cannot forego or let go of what is rightfully for Libya and Libyan sovereignty. Yes, the government might be weak at the moment, but once Libya is stabilized and there is a strong government, then Libya will,
we're going to talk about
will actually protect its rights in the Mediterranean.
Nursin, how will this reshape the regional balances of power, as well as the dynamics of European energy politics? Is this a really historic era?
It is a main turning point. I will reconsider it as a game changer, actually, because there was an attempt by 4 countries like Southern Cypriots, Greece, as well as Israel and Egypt. These 4 countries, depending on EU, basically, as well as maybe a little covered by US, just to contain Turkey to a very small area, which is the Gulf of Antalya. This was based on the map of Sevilla that has been issued in Spain by the university. So this report, this plan was tried to be somehow, despite to the international law, forged in this region. And Turkey, with this agreement now, has brought some kind of a shield between Greece and Southern Cypriots as well as Egypt, which actually Greece has tried to combine this area as it's expanded its maritime zone. So this is a very important beginning.
On the other hand, but excuse me, Guma, the Turkey-Libya Maritime Agreement also significantly expands Egypt's maritime zone in the Mediterranean, but Egypt opposes that. Why? And could you tell us about your country's relations with the current administration of Egypt?
Well, the relationship is not very good because the current regime in Egypt fully supports Haftar. They give him military support and all sorts of logistical support, which is very unfortunate. Yet this agreement, as you rightly say, actually recovers some of the area, possibly somewhere around 12,000 square kilometers for Egypt, which should belong to Egypt. This idea that Egypt, Israel, Greece, and Southern Cyprus should actually come together against Turkey and try to isolate Turkey is very, very unfair. It is politically motivated and it should not be allowed. That's why this agreement with Libya, in a way, helps Turkey a little bit as well.
You just mentioned, tell us about the current situation in Libya. Will the international recognize al-Sarraj government able to attain peace and stability in the region? And if not, what happens? Because in a way, fate of this agreement depends on the stability of your country.
Yes, well, the GNA headed by Sarraj in Tripoli is the legitimate government, internationally recognized by the UN, but it is facing a horrific war now by Haftar for 8 months. He's attacking Tripoli. He wants to take over Tripoli and take over power and return us to military dictatorship. But Tripoli and the GNA and many other cities in Libya are fighting back. In a way, Haftar is leading a proxy war. He's fighting in behalf of Egyptian regime, the Emiratis, the Russians, the French, and possibly others. There are many mercenaries.
Is Italy with you?
Italy, in a way, is not with Haftar. UK is not with Haftar. The United States is not with Haftar. I think they are alarmed by the fact that...
They're in the middle.
Yeah, but now they're alarmed that there are about 1,400 Russian mercenaries on Libyan soil. This is a big development for them, which they don't want Libya to become dominated by Russia, just like Syria was, or is. So I think in a way we are fighting a proxy war. Haftar is leading a proxy war. We are not fighting Haftar, we are fighting all these countries who do not want Libya to be stable, to be democratic. They want it to be a military dictatorship ruled by one man. So this one
rather than a civilian, right?
So that this one man guarantees the interests of Egypt, the Emiratis, and the Russians and the French, not the interest of the Libyan people. That's why we are fighting. But our alliance with Turkey, these agreements with Turkey, hopefully will help us as well, because when we ask for military help and military support from Turkey, it's a legitimate support based on an agreement according to international law with a government which is a legitimate government in Tripoli.
Yes, Nursin, tell us about, because we're almost running out of time, about Turkey's interests and Libya's relations. I mean, before Gaddafi and today and from now on.
I mean, we used to have very close relationship with Libya, not only historical-wise. I'm not going to go into that. It's very obvious. But even in Gaddafi's time, we had close trade relations with them. And despite this civil war that was, it's a proxy war, as Juma has mentioned it. So I rather call this a small new Cold War experience that is going on this country. It's because of its natural resources, which is the oil, which brings all these external powers. We are using the proxies on the ground. But here now there is a chance, there is a window of opportunity that these two agreements can come into a fore, because as Juma said, via using this new military agreement, everyone was accusing Turkey that it was illegitimate, that she was supporting the legitimate government of Libya, which was recognized by UN. And now we have heard that attempt of coup somehow was happened very recently, and against to these kind of happenings, maybe this
Turkey will be supportive
will be there,
Libya.
Similarly like perhaps in Qatar, for instance.
So, Juma, do you expect more countries to join your fight against this warlord Haftar and the camp against your government?
Well, what we are trying to do is we're trying to strengthen our alliance and relationship with all our friends, and Turkey comes as the #1 ally and friend at the moment. We are trying to also work on pushing France away from supporting Haftar, and also deal with the Russian influence in Libya, which is very dangerous, and it has taken a serious turn in the last few weeks. 1,400 Russian fighters are fighting with Haftar on Libyan soil. This is very, very serious. This is almost internationalizing the conflict now in Libya. We are trying to also get the United States to be involved to try to counter this Russian influence and to try to support, or at least not object to Turkey supporting us in this military campaign. It's ironic that people are objecting to Turkey supporting the legitimate government, yet they don't object to Egypt, the Emiratis, the Russians, and the French giving airplanes, giving all types of military equipment and fighters and mercenaries and military officers fighting on the ground with Haftar. It is really ironic.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Nursin, Juma, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
At first glance, the failed coup of July 15, 2016 appeared to involve Turkey's domestic enemies, chief among them Fethullah Gülen and his Feto terror network. But after years of intelligence gathering, the Turkish government has put a new suspect on notice. Former Palestinian official Mohammed Dahlan is being accused of conspiring with Feto to orchestrate the failed coup. Exiled and living in the United Arab Emirates, Dahlan has been described as a shadowy figure working to destabilize governments across the region. Now he has a $700,000 bounty on his head. But who is he and what does his past reveal? Let's take a look. And joining me now is Ibrahim Hamami, who is the director of the London-based Palestinian Affairs Center, and Vehbi Baysan, who is an assistant professor at Ibn Haldun University in Istanbul. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. Vehbi, what kind of a threat Mohammed Dahlan does pose to Turkey to earn him a place on Turkey's most wanted list?
But probably he's an unusual person to be on that list because, I mean, we know why, but the reason I'm saying is that probably he's the first Palestinian, put it that way. This is because his involvement in 2016 coup attempt, because previously, I mean, in the 4 months that leading to that coup attempt, actually, there are a lot of transactions, proven transactions between Dahlan and the Feto terror organizations who staged this attempted coup and luckily...
Why it took Turkey 3 years to put him on the most wanted list? Was Turkey gathering intelligence throughout that time?
Well, that too, but also what happened is that an article was published, if you remember, in the US detailing his involvement in that failed coup attempt. And Turkey was really furious because it was unexpected. And it says he's an outside hand, but because of his suspicious dealings with the United Arab Emirates and what happened in Palestine and all the rest of it. So Turkey kept it for a while, quite until studying in detail his firm involvement in it.
Okay. Ibrahim, his name seems to pop up every time a government is destabilized in the region. Correct. Tell us about his background. Is he acting alone? Who is he?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And people think, is he a Superman that every time there's something wrong in any region in the Middle East, his name pops up? He has a hand in every area there, which is a hot area. And I mean, there are reasons why he is like that. He's not a special person, but his past has gained him this sort of notorious sort of level. I mean, he was recruited very early in the 1980s, and this is according to a guy called Yaakov Berry, who was a Shabak, the internal Israeli internal security apparatus. In a book he wrote, he says, my career as an intelligence man, and he said he was actually recruited in the 1980s in Tunisia. Whitley Brunner, who is a CIA operative, confirmed that, and this has been never denied by Dahlan himself, despite being widely reported. Also, they invested very heavily in him when he was in the Palestinian territories in Gaza as the head of the preventive security. And there were I mean, like campaigns after campaigns, agreements after agreements. Dayton is one of
Tell
them.
us about his investors. Are you implying the United States
Definitely.
or Israel? Is Israel grooming him?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a public sort of thing. It's not a secret.
Okay.
I mean, I have examples here. I mean, there was a Rome Security Accord. There was the Dayton Agreement. I mean, they channeled millions and millions of dollars to his office in specific. I mean, George Bush in June 2003, after invading Iraq, he did mention, I like this guy, and he gave them a presentation with Sharon at the time. So they invested very heavily in him.
Okay.
They trusted him because he can do anything. He can betray anything. He betrayed Arafat, he betrayed Mahmoud Abbas, he betrayed Hamas in Gaza Strip. He doesn't care.
He
as far
basically betrayed his own Palestinians. He
Yes.
filed a legal complaint against Abbas at the International Criminal Court, and the complaint was filed by an Israeli lawyer. So, does he want to become the next Palestinian president? And I mean, if he becomes the Palestinian president, how will it serve the interests of Palestinians given these circumstances?
Well, given back to his CV, probably it's not going to help much because, look, in April 2002, Israeli Defense Minister Benjamin Ben-Eli, he said that we should give Gaza to Dahlan.
Correct.
Wow.
Imagine. So he's that much. And also, International Criminal Court actually opened the court case because of his involvement in Libya and because of with
Saif al-Islam
Islam.
involvement, yes.
Gaddafi's son,
Unbelievable.
right?
They looked at it, yes.
Yeah, they looked at it, but also, you know, the corruption charges is like $15 million disappeared and all that.
He was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment in the Palestinian territory.
Yeah, in his absence.
Because of he stole $16 million according to them.
But more than that, of course, we know, especially the Jewish lobby in the US are very keen to strike a deal for the region. They call it for the region, but of course this is for Israel. No benefit to Palestinians whatsoever. And Kushner, you remember, is actually, they very much in the region trying to convince the leaders for this deal to go. But this is, I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me, but this is not really to the benefit of Palestinians
Absolutely.
at all.
No.
It's just basically to, you know, what do you want? You want a bit of money, we give you, and then we, you know, hog the land and then forget about the rest.
What is the purpose? We see him in Libya, we see him in Egypt, we see him in Turkey and Palestine as well. So is he apparently working against radicals in those regions? Because we know he's dealing with these foreign mercenaries who assassinate Yemeni politicians,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, he is a conduit. He's an instrument and tool for the UAE.
What is the ultimate goal?
Well, it's a regional sort of conflict. UAE is completely against the post-Arab Spring sort of democratic transition, and they're trying to abort that in every region where there were democratic elections or the democratic process will bring someone who's not in their circles. So he's the tool for that. He's the conduit. So if they are funneling money, he's the one who's doing it. If they are trying to recruit mercenaries, he's the one doing it. If they are trying to attempt a coup in Turkey, for example, he's the one who's arranging it.
But again, cooperating with another radicals, which you have a
Yeah,
terror
exactly.
organization.
So if you look at it, I mean, in Libya, he's not against the radicals. It's the opposite. People who actually got rid of the radicals in Sirte, for example, he's against them. Okay, in Yemen, he's killing, assassinating leaders of the Islah Party, who's not part of the civil war. In Egypt,
But it has links to Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Yeah.
That's why they're killing them, right?
this is one of the reasons. I mean, it's a completely not against Islamic Brotherhood. It's against Islamic ideology in general. So any democratic process that brings an Islamist government, they're totally against it. Okay, regardless of who's coming up with it. So he's the instrument, tool, conduit for the UAE, not working. He's like having the backup, the support and protection of them. They send them all over the place. They send them to attend the Atlantic Treaty Association in Brussels in 2015, in November, to attack Turkey and President Erdogan in this meeting. They sent them to meet with President Putin in Russia in a special security arrangement to represent the UAE. So that's why he's getting these sort of involvements.
So, Vehbi, tell me about it. Dahlan is some sort of a foreign policy tool of the United Arab Emirates, but what is behind this dispute, or rather hostilities between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates? What's happening?
I think Turkey, we should explain this from the Turkey's involvement in the region. At the moment, Turkey is kind of a mediator, especially the Palestinian cause concerned. Now, Dahlan, now we have these elections coming up in 2 months' time. I don't know if the time is, date is set, but let's say in January, February, very time soon. So we have Mahmoud Abbas, we also have Hamas representatives. They are dealing with Turkey, and Turkey, what they want is that they don't want to involve with the elections in Palestine, but they know one thing: Dahlan should not be the next president of Palestine, and I think Turkey will do their best to avoid that.
Will that happen?
Well, I mean, it's not just Turkey. I think a lot of people in the Arab region, they don't want him to be in any sort of position because of his notorious, I would say, crimes in the region. Definitely the Palestinians don't want him to be there. And he's trying very hard with the money and with the sort of spider web network of contacts all over the region to get involved or get as the next PA president or chairman.
Well, it will be up to the Palestinian people's will, right?
Even if this is the outcome, that it is clean and the outcome doesn't fit with Israeli goals, they're going to do the same, exactly the same. I mean, kidnap the members of the Legislative Council, I mean, stop and freeze all the political life there. So either it brings someone they like or they stop it.
All right, gentlemen, I'm afraid we're out of time. It was good to talking to you. Thank you for joining me on Straight Talk.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ayşe Süberker. If you've got any comments, do share them with us on Twitter with the hashtag Straight Talk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.